Here we go.
Welcome, everybody. This is the KubeVirt community meeting, August 7th, 2019. Kind of a light agenda so far this morning, but one note is the service monitor integration into KubeVirt. The PR is already in the document, and basically what this is we already have Prometheus metrics exposed, but the OpenShift Prometheus service doesn't or isn't aware of them. So this is connecting the dots and actually registering with that so that our metrics will show up just right in the OpenShift Prometheus data as it pushes it. And are there any questions on that or comments? All right, and we do have an upcoming release this week. It'll be the 0.20 release, and I will let Fabian speak to that.
Yeah. Oh, excuse me. So yes, yeah. I mean, you already sent out an email that we're delaying the release a little bit, and the plan is now to have a release candidate. And actually, Mark was a little bit active over in the past weeks to drive that topic a little bit forward, to move to a release process where we have release candidates and then releases based on those candidates. That is also motivated by the PRO work, which is done by Roman and others, ultimately to improve our code that we're releasing. Long story short, we're going to have a release candidate, and we're probably having a release later this week. Yeah, I think that's it.
All right, was just typing in there for you. Is there anything else that we'd like to cover in the agenda today, gentlemen, ladies?
Yeah, I can't write as fast to populate the agenda. So the other item I wanted to raise, and there was, I actually saw some stuff around that, was the CNCF submission of KubeVirt. I wanted to give a little bit more context to that one. Let me see, CNCF TOC, where is it? There it is. So we submitted KubeVirt to the CNCF, like most of you have noticed by now. And it was a little bit, I take parts of that on my cap. We could have actually sent out an invitation to the mailing list to give heads up prior to the presentation on the to the CNCF Technical Oversights Committee. I missed to do that. And to be honest, that was also because I was not sure if that is the ask from the committee, right, to have on these presentations, have the community stepping in and vocally or audibly in audio support this submission. So that's why I didn't send that out up front. But during the CNCF presentation, there were asks, how supportive the community is for KubeVirt in general or of KubeVirt in general, and also submitting to the CNCF. By now, I'm so thankful to see, like from you, Gage, I see your name, right? Thank you for adding a comment on the CNCF PR. That's really helping. So I hope we can, or I will pick up this topic again and see that we drive it forward over the next weeks. With that support, I'm optimistic that we're finding sponsors. Oh yeah, speaking of sponsors, the biggest issue at the moment is, or just to give a small recap of the whole process of a CNCF submission, is if we want to submit any project to the CNCF sandbox, then we need to meet some criteria, and the biggest gap we currently have is to have sponsors in the CNCF TOC. We need at least 2 to get KubeVirt accepted into the CNCF sandbox. And I hope that that we can now identify 2 sponsors which are backed by the community support, willing to sponsor KubeVirt and get it accepted into the sandbox, which will then be a longer process, but at least we will have the sponsors.
So Fabian, what is the I guess I'm new to this submission to CNCF, and I'm glad you're doing it. So thanks for your effort. But what is the sponsor thing, and how do we get it, or what's holding us back from it? Is that they have to give us money or something?
No, it's more like a mindshare sponsorship, right? So the technical committee is like 8 people, and they are overseeing all the projects that are in the CNC or under the CNCF umbrella, and which are asking to get under the CNCF umbrella. And this committee, and we need sponsors from that committee which are sponsoring our our proposal, or which act as sponsors to support that we get into the CNCF.
So do you need things like testimonials or things like that? Like how can we help?
Oh yeah, so a testimonial would help. So if you see the pull request link, which I'm highlighting now, then it would help if you write down there a comment and stating what your use case eventually, or possibly, or what you want to do with KubeVirt, and also ask the CNCF, right, to help us with sponsors. So that would definitely help.
Okay, let me take that link. I know that I have found this thing extremely useful at this point, so I can try to put some kind of testimonial or something that's helped me. So.
Yeah, cool. So I will also see that we I'll try to promote that even more, also via Twitter, right, and continue to see that we get some interest in it, because I hope it's so funny on some degree, because I hope that we get some thumbs up on your comment then to signal, because thumbs up the emojis seem to be the way to vote for things. It's so funny that they're seeing that there is support. And in the end, I think it will end up with that I need to speak to the on one of the meetings again and get their traction to the KubeVirt proposal to
Great.
move forward.
I'd have been I know it's in another channel, someone did ask something about if I could write something up about Cube and things like that, the things I've been doing. I did write something in my public GitHub called KubeStack, and it's this project where I want to put pods and VMs at the same time together and do things with it. And KubeVirt is a big part of that. And maybe I should just socialize some of that just to help people get started, because I think I've solved a few problems of just trying to get it up and running. So maybe that will help get more people on board. But even at work, in my daily projects, there was certain things we have to do, and I'm trying to advocate, the use of KubeVirt in some of these areas, because it just seems like a good solution for what we're trying to do. So I'll try to drum up some support here, maybe throw a tweet or something like that. But.
Yeah, I think that would help. And by the way, I would like to get back to KubeStack in a minute. So we have a new agenda item. What did I want to say is, yeah, so KubeVirt, I think the problem really is with KubeVirt currently and the CNCF, if we look at, at the current committee, no, let's start differently. I think KubeVirt is difficult in the CNCF context because it's so much about the, the container-based workflows and tooling, and KubeVirt is a little bit off of this track because we're still caring about legacy VMs. But in the end, I hope that we need to build a story which is allowing, container-native people to support KubeVirt as well. So if we have, if we manage to tell that story better, then it might help to get sponsors, because they have an easier story to tell. For container.
So, excuse me, my name is Vadan.
Hey.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I work for AT&T Mobility as a cloud architect. And if you guys are aware that AT&T is rolling out 5G network nationwide, and we are rolling out cloud, as we call network cloud, NC. Now the network cloud consists of two major workloads. One is the control plan, and another is the user plan. So control plan is applications which controls the user plan applications, and user plan applications are mainly the applications which provide the services, 5G services, right? Now, our control plan is a Kubernetes. We have converted all our controlling applications into Kubernetes, but our user plan, it still is on VM, because our telecom companies like Nokia and Ericsson and others, they're still learning containerization, and they are still working on the virtual machines. And it will take long for them to move into the containers, because things doesn't work fast in telecom world. So now, as a result, what happens that as a management perspective, we need to manage two different technologies. We need a skill set to manage the Kubernetes, and then we also need infrastructure to manage VMs, because our user plan applications are still working on VM. So it means we need OpenStack as well. So we are running OpenStack services as a container to manage our VMs, which is running the user applications, right? So can you guys tell me how KubeVirt can help in this scenario? can KubeVirt eliminate the need of running OpenStack?
Sure. So maybe let me just close the current topic, because I think everything is said. Dennis, I would appreciate if you comment there, but we spoke about that, and then that's everything for me on that matter. For running the, so let me see. How do we want to proceed?
I could jump in here. I think that this is the classic use case, actually, that KubeVirt was created to address. What you've got is two infrastructures, where you've got management for containers and management for VMs, where you need to be spending mental resources, real compute resources, manpower, and time managing two completely disparate stacks of logic and communications here. So what KubeVirt is basically doing is making a VM look like a container, is putting it into a container. And so what that allows you to do is manage the VM directly from your container management infrastructure. And in fact, in an OpenShift console, it really appears that way, where you've got your VMs. Is that, helps frame the
yeah, that's exactly, I was thinking internally, because our telecom workloads are not easily, you can call, containerizable. They are heavy and they have a lot of needs from finally they moved to VM after like 3 or 4 years of architecting and re-architecting. So moving to containers will again take a long time. So meanwhile, how can we help a company like AT&T, which you have a massive, like I think around 500 nodes across the US, which will run these two stacks,
One of the things to consider is if you are running something specific inside the VMs, which requires SRIOV or DPDK, which is usually very common in OpenStack deployments for telco industries. KubeVirt is starting to include some of the SRIOV codes there, but DPDK and other technologies are in the roadmap, but not available.
So actually, we have two kind of VMs. One is, some of them use DPDK, some of them use SRIOV. We prefer SRIOV because of the faster and higher throughput. And there is another third way, is that support SRIOV through DPDK. So you have a DPDK driver supports SRIOV, So what happens that the applications which already DPDK enabled, they don't need to change. They can just use SRIOV infrastructure as well. So are you saying that KubeVirt is not supporting SRIOV? It just supports DPDK?
It is. We actually, even today we have support for SRIOV devices to pass through SRIOV devices to the to the VM, and that work is continuing. I think that's what Pablo wanted to say.
Oh yeah, it's a work in progress kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but as far as sponsorship is concerned, do you think that this use case can help you, and how can I help in that case?
Oh yeah, so I think exactly, I wanted to get back to the use case. So I think outlining your use case and saying why you need to continue to use VMs, and we all know this might be either a long transitioning period where we need to move from VMs to containers, and at some point we can get rid of VMs, or maybe we don't. But outlining your use case and saying that this would be valuable to you and why KubeVirt is valuable to you, that would help.
Okay, sure. So these are the open, these are documents which AT&T has shared in internet, like this user planning and program things I was talking about. So I can share those documents with you guys for you to look into. There are good nice pictures they have, like different racks and different components, right?
Yeah.
And then I keep a note. I write a note that how KubeVirt can help. And in that case, I don't know if I know AT&T is heavily involved in Linux Foundation, and I think they're also involved in CNCF as well. I don't know, but if you guys touch somebody from AT&T and present our use case, maybe you will get some sponsorship points there.
Yeah, I think that's helped, especially the diversity. So we hate AT&T, and then I think you're from a different company, right?
I think for projects like KubeVirt, telecom is a very important use case.
Yeah. Because
telecom VMs we have just moved from legacy to VM, and moving from VM to container, it's a very tedious process.
Yeah.
And all of our telecom vendors mostly have their own OSs, like Ericsson use WinLiver Linux, their own version of Linux, right?
Yeah.
When they move to container, they need to come to the same host OS, which is again a big task. In VM, you had this guest OS luxury, so that you can create VM of your flavor, right? But in container, if you run a bare metal container, then you don't have that choice because you have to run that native Linux, right? So that's why the transition will take even longer.
Yeah. By the way, do you mind writing down your name in the minutes, because then I can call you out by name, which I
Just call him VM6314.
Yeah, VM.
It's probably running in the VM.
That's my code. My name is VADA.
Great.
Oh, it is? VADA?
Yeah.
By the way, one goal for me and for us of having the CNCF submissions actually is to get, it's great, by the way, that you speak up, but because I think capturing the use cases and then, building interest groups, that is one of the goals with after this CNCF submission, right? To have, the telco group or the Cube on Cube group and the just running classical VMs, they all have, it will be important to capture these use cases and have supporters for those. So that's the step after, or actually during the submission. Thanks for speaking up.
Thank you. So I'll send all the details I have, and let me see if I can get a name of a CNCF person within AT&T so we have those teams, external engagement teams, which is responsible for this outsource open source projects, So if I can connect you with them, maybe it will help.
Yes, please, sir. Don't hesitate to give my email address. I think it's even on the slide.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Troy.
And thank you. Okay, I think the next subject here is KubeStack, and I'll let Dennis speak to that.
Oh, somehow I made it on the agenda. Okay. So my thought with KubeStack, and I mean the problems that we're trying to solve is that we use OpenStack like all these other guys are doing, and in our particular situation, OpenStack was created by like the OpenStack people who are around or left the group or left the company or whatnot, right? So they created this entity that we depend on for VMs and things like that, and we like it, and we also have the project that we're actually doing is microservices and such, containers, Kubernetes, and all this other stuff, and we have a very small team, and we want to build, and part of the challenges of that team, which is the challenges of a lot of other teams, is building things like Kubernetes operational knowledge, and even building OpenStack operational knowledge. And because of the size of the team and the number of constraints and all the responsibilities going on, there's a limited amount of time you can give to all these different things. So one of the things I wanted to do was, for me, I'm the subject matter expert in the Kubernetes side. So if you talk Kubernetes to me, cool, I'm in it, But when you talk OpenStack side, I'm only starting to become a subject matter expert over there, and so just understanding the architectures. But I'm a networking guy, so I can understand some stuff. But then some of the use cases we had were build me Kubernetes clusters and test things like KubeSpray. That was the biggest one because we use KubeSpray to build our production deployments. Every Kubernetes cluster we have, we use KubeSpray. So we're a big KubeSpray fan. And I spent like last summer, 3 months just going through the code and understanding it because, like it or not, it's open source. But guess what? We're in the KubeSpray business. So I've gotten some sort of call it somewhat quote unquote expertise in that area to understand the code. But the problem with KubeSpray, I mean, good or bad as it may, it's open source, lots of contributors, lots of changes. You can't just take version 2.4 of KubeSpray back in the day, make a production thing, put it in production, and then they say, okay, no problem, KubeSpray 2.5 came out, let's just run it on production. Nobody is going to buy into that because they're just deathly afraid, what's going to happen, what changes did they make, what's going on under the hood. And so what we've done is like stopped on a particular version, and kept using that. So back to the use cases. Now, as time has gone on, their KubeSpray has evolved into new versions, new features and things like that we like, but I need a way to test it. And so again, back to create me some Kubernetes clusters. And that is a task in and of itself. People have to know how to do that. But we want to just automate that so that create me a Kubernetes cluster is just a couple of words in 15 minutes, you make that. It's just part of your job, create it. Then I can do experiments on things like KubeSpray and stuff like that, test out the features, maybe tweak a few things in KubeSpray and do things for our particular use case. Because there's many things that we're being hit with security operations type deals where we have to put patches. We have to, like files are being introduced. I saw that the HTTP cache file was in there with the wrong permissions because someone used kubectl on the nodes themselves. We have to upgrade Docker. We have to, there's a lot of these pretty heavy weighted type changes we have to make in production and with no downtime. And so I need clusters I can build for my sort of SRE engineers or just engineers that can go off and play with what we call our run books. How can you upgrade Docker in a just like a Kubernetes cluster that we built with KubeSpray? Build me one of these, upgrade Docker, give me no downtime. What's the run book? What's the fastest way I can get this thing done? And be able to aggressively go after those changes and aggressively try things so that you can be, you can try things without fear. Because if you try it, you find a way, it's faster. I want to keep that way. But before we even touch production, I want you to be able to have the freedom to do that. And that's why I need these clusters quickly. And a lot of times, when you destroy a cluster for whatever reason, you just put all the random patches that the security teams had put, things are just not working. You could spend some time debugging it. And for me, that's always a fun puzzle. But sometimes for these guys, they're runbook people. I want you to run the runbook, destroy, recreate it. 15 minutes later, you're back on the road and you can do another one. Or you can make more clusters in the background and you have now a pipeline of clusters that you can play with. You can just play with, destroy. And with KubeVirt, I like how you can create the VMs, use them, get the same IP addresses. And using KubeVirt, because it's all still Kubernetes, you're like in my world now, in the SRE's operational world. You're not messing with OpenStack. If you got really good at OpenStack, it doesn't help us in production. But if you got good at debugging Kubernetes, it helps you everywhere because that's really what our business is about, is everything runs on there. So I'm trying to make it so the operational knowledge that you gain from debugging things like KubeVirt and VMs and things like that in KubeSpray translates into the operational knowledge you need just to keep our business running. And also, we have I have this thing called the cool periodic system. And the idea is like cool means is like Zool except with a K for Kubernetes. And it's really super simple. There's nothing really invented here. It's just using Kubernetes cron jobs. You run periodic jobs on production. And it's great. But again, it's Kubernetes. So you need some operational knowledge for how to operate that. But the beauty of that is I used to run these things on OpenStack with Zool. The VMs are very heavy, 8 gig a piece, 4 CPUs, you run them, it takes time to destroy them, recreate, and there's all this logic in Zool, et cetera, to try to keep the system running. When the developers run a bunch of CI tests, it bogs it down. And then again, operational knowledge. People don't know how to make another Zool, let's say, or they have to take time to learn to create it. So we built this Kubernetes thing, this cool periodic system. You can just Google that and it'll run these jobs for you. Now, the secret sauce behind it is just Kubernetes. It's just pods, very lightweight. Spin up a pod, run your periodic job, destroy the pod, and this thing runs something like, there's like 18, 20 data centers. There's like every hour you're running 3 different jobs. There's like some 800 something jobs like a day or whatever. And it's every day, and it just keeps running. And we just keep running this thing. And notice the use case is very focused. So operational knowledge on this thing and operating is easy. If something goes wrong, cordon, wait for the jobs to finish, reboot, done. So it's operationally very simple. And again, we're trying to take advantage of the simplicity of a focused use case. And so now I have these containers that run my periodic jobs for doing deployments and testing, canary tests and all that. I want to now I want to debug certain things that like for, let's say, for regular CI testing, unit testing, developers like to use Minikube. And I can't run a Minikube in these periodic jobs because they're pods. You can't run Minikube in a pod. That's one of my major use cases. And I want to be able to spin up these VMs using the same images that I've been using for my CI system, my overworked CI system on Zool. I basically took those images, copied them over, and you can do the Docker build of the wrapper that you guys provide in KubeVirt. And then boom, you now have that same exact VM. Then I can go over to Zool and see all the little Ansible that it runs, just run that right on the VM. I could now run and debug your Minikube thing right there on my VM, as if I was running it in Zool. But now I have this nice compartmentalized area where I can test things. So now I can very quickly debug this stuff for them. And one of my goals for KubeVirt is now I have not only containers, I now have VMs running as containers, again, using all the same address management. I don't need a whole nother IPAM thing like, OpenStack has like provider networks and all this stuff. I get a whole new subnet. I got to go to the data center and get subnets and manage the addresses. Here, it's all in Calico. I just bring them up, shut them down. I don't care. They're just addresses. They're very ephemeral. So I've even written a script that basically you create 5 VMs, grab the addresses. Again, it's just kubectl commands to grab the addresses, spin up the Kubernetes cluster, and do stuff with it, and then later destroy it. Done. It's a very ephemeral type thing. So my use case really comes down to just marrying the two pods and VMs all in the same infrastructure. Again, reusing that same operational knowledge, so that you don't have to have people train on OpenStack and all these other things. And also I think the swiftness of being able to bring it up, tear it down, in some, I think it's just kubectl get VMI or something like that, right? So that's my use case. And then recently, because of all the security things, people are making me do this stuff. I was kind of balking at them. You're making me do all this stuff. It'll take me months. I got to build all this thing to study KubeSpray. And basically what I was trying to do is build the case that I need a new environment to help me do these quick tests for KubeSpray. And that environment is basically based on KubeVirt now. So now it's almost like I'm trying to turn it around to them, say, okay, you better make that environment. We need this thing now. And I'm like, okay, no problem. Now I have this very good use case to just build up this KubeVirt infrastructure. And that's what I've been doing this lately here. And even I missed the last week's meeting because I was bogged down in just trying to debug the thing. But now I'm no longer debugging KubeVirt. I'm just kind of using KubeVirt for this testing. So that's really what KubeStack is about. Is I wanted to call it KubeInStack. It's almost like replacing OpenStack. But back to Baden's question here, I don't want to replace OpenStack. OpenStack, I think, has its place. It does VMs very well. It's done it for a long time. But I think to supplement it is really what my use case is here. We're not going to take away anything from the OpenStack that's currently running. People still use that stuff. But what I'm trying to do is give more choices. Expand out into something that shares the same operational knowledge as the other things we do, but give more choice and the swiftness of being able to deal with the VMs in and out in a relatively simple way. But that's really what the KubeStack thing is about. And I have a write-up in the, I think I call it the Cube Mini Cloud. It's on my public GitHub.
Yeah. So first, thank you for describing your use case so well. And second, I think that's a pretty good topic for a KubeCon submission. And just like the one from the AT&T side, yeah, we should lay it out there, and then I hope that we increase the likelihood of getting accepted. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Thank you. So at this point, I don't think we have any other topics on the agenda unless somebody needs to add something at the last second here.
There is one thing I just wanted to ask about, is that one of the challenges of running the VMs on the OpenStack is, as you know, there's this concept of IP and IP, because you still have the Kubernetes, the outside Kubernetes, the hosting Kubernetes, in my case, Calico, right? It uses IP and IP. But then you have the inside Kubernetes that may also use IP and IP, right? So now you have 2 IPs and IPs. And the way to mitigate that is easy. I put it in my doc because I blew 4 days figuring it out. You just cut the MTU down, no biggie. But is there another, or what are other people using for the container, the networking plugin here that might help make the need for cutting the MTU down even less?
So, I mean, what we historically did, I mean, we from the Red Hat side, we added support for Multus in order to pass through layer 2 networking devices. So you get access to the bare metal, right? And we could do the same for Calico. So making KubeVirt aware of Calico so that you can pass through layer 2 devices to your VM, and then you avoid the encapsulation. I know that others, Gage, is it you? Is using it's StackPath, I think, is using the SRIOV work to provide physical networking to the VM, and thus avoiding the nesting of the.
How mature is the SIOV work?
I think it's pretty mature. I know that, it was provided not by Red Hat, but somebody else, and they did it for their use case, and they're using it for quite a while, as far as I know.
Okay. Question regarding SRIOV?
Sorry?
Is related to SRIOV maturity?
No, just the supporting KubeVirt for it.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, because if I'm going to go after something like that to try to make my MTUs nice and bigger, or even
So
get?
actually, we in AT&T last year we did one exercise where we come up with container requirements for telco workload. So Multus is one of them, right? And then I have several others: volume cloning and screen snapshotting and something else. So I will forward those details to you guys. Maybe you guys want to look into it.
Okay, yeah. So Multus might be something interesting to try. Okay.
Multus, yeah, we are like we are working. I mean, the other teams are looking at Multus to solve
Okay.
this IP address issue.
And that's
Because
pretty mature as well.
yeah,
As
because
a,
most of our telecom applications do need to see the IP address for load balancing. They need open layer 3. And that was one of the biggest bottleneck we had when we started working on containers. That most of our applications are SIP-based applications. We call service session initiated protocol. And SIP needs to read IP packets in order to process. It's first step one, you know. So if containers do not support it, then we cannot move forward. And then I think we came across Multus. So now we are working on Multus.
Yeah, I mean, Multus is a meta provider because it can effectively provide you anything that is, you know, where a CNI plugin exists. But Calico has other advantages, if I'm not mistaken. Is there Calico VPP? Was it that? Or no, it was Contif VPP. That's from Cisco. That's something else. Yeah.
So we use Calico for our control plan, for our Kubernetes networking.
Yes.
But for user plan, we have SRIOV and we have DPDK, and then we have OpenVSwitch for generic workloads, right? And if you want to move to containers, our user plan workloads, then we need to think about something like Multus.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can, so we really need to, yeah. So actually, Dennis, now that you have the question, I think one thing would be really be that we document these best practices, because I know that they're not on the call so often, but as said, the SRV people or provided that support, they also have their experience with KubeVirt, which is like, you know, a year old, so they can also probably do some recommendations.
Because I could easily see coming up with, as you say, a best practice where, you know, just a recipe. You know, I call it how to create a kube stack. Install KubeVirt, install this, install that, and in doing that, we can recommend, you know, use SRIOV and or use Calico or set this MTUs and just a recipe to bring one up. So now you can just, you know, how they do for OpenStack. There's like this whole big thing about how to create your OpenStack and such. And frankly, that's a giant document, and I still don't know how to bring up an OpenStack. But I would think that something like this is, you know, step one, create a Kubernetes cluster, you know, and that's pretty well understood. You know, step two, install these 5 things. You know, I think that's kind of what my recipe is. Just install these 5 things here. Step 3, grab your images, run these Docker commands here on them, and just load them up. And step 3, make your VMs. So that's simple.
You know, one thing that is actually doing, I mean, what we did from the Reddit side, I mean, we have our use case, which is running classical VMs alongside containers, is we created HCO, so hyperconverged cluster, hyperconverged operator, which you can also find in the KubeVirt org. And that is actually doing what you just outlined. It's actually deploying our opinionated components. So for us, it's deploying Multus, it's deploying Rook. Is it deploying Rook already? If not, then it will be. It's deploying some Windows templates and, you know, RHEL templates and others in future. So it is that set of opinionated components, right? In order to and then configuring KubeVirt accordingly to meet our use case. So actually, if you have,
say that again, or just pop it in the note here.
Yeah.
I probably should take a look at that.
Yeah, and what I was about to say is, I think that is a pattern. You're probably faster than I am at providing it. Let me see. Here it is. Shared it in the chat. That's actually a pattern which I think would also map to other use cases. If we, you know, because even if between yours, Dennis, and Vadan, an operator could help here, right? Because an operator is encoding the operator knowledge, the operative knowledge. And for your use case, you could say, you know, right, I need an operator which is deploying KubeVirt in this configuration with my storage backend and Calico in that way. And the operator also is encapsulating all the knowledge for the operative work, you know, how are updates performed. If you're an operative person, you know how difficult updates are, right? But you can encode it into the operator to do these updates for you. And that is what we do with HCO. And that is what we can do for other use cases as well, right?
Okay.
So if we say we have a specific appliance which we need on our 5G network, like from Ericsson, then we can have an operator which is encoding how to deploy that appliance, what pre-requirements it has and how the updates are performed. That is a pattern we try to.
What is it? Is it only supports OpenShift?
No, you can also deploy it on there's one, in general, it's only fully supported in OpenShift, but just because we're using OpenShift templates, but that's really a nit. You can also deploy it in Kubernetes, but then it's, some part is not working as it should be. It's fixable. It's not intended to be only supported in OpenShift. That is not the goal. It's just a side effect at the moment.
But is OpenShift the one, sort of the main one it was built and tested on?
Yeah, I mean, I'm from Red Hat, and we have a Kubernetes distribution called OpenShift. So we're targeting as our primary target, but that's not the intention to exclude Kubernetes. So Kubernetes support is a best effort, and it's not working bad there.
That's fine, because I'm from IBM.
Oh, you see.
We're salivating at the OpenShift thing. So we would love to get our hands on that thing.
Yeah. No, besides the fun, what I really want to say is it's just that we had to optimize for some use case. We have our requirements, but we always have the intention to also support it in plain Kubernetes because we don't want to do a lock-in.
I will look at that, because if there's a way that I could just stand up this whole thing like a whole nother one with just this thing, it'd be nice.
Yeah, because it's 3 steps, right? You deploy the operator, you deploy a custom resource, which is saying how you want it configured, and then KubeVirt and Multus is getting deployed, and that's it.
Yep. I think it will make it easier for other people. If I can just use this one, I'll just say, go there and install this, and just to get more of these KubeVirts around so people have their own play area.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So one other thing is, when I have a Kubernetes inside the Kubernetes cluster, and I want to expose a service outside of that cluster, you just use a node port. But how do you expose that service outside of the outside cluster? Is that ever a use case that anyone uses?
I've not seen this, and to be honest, for simplicity reasons, I would say take a Multus layer 2 path through and get you onto the same network as the under cluster, and then it's much easier. I know that the SAP guys, they're also running Kubernetes and Kubernetes for HALT multi-tenancy for their teams.
Yes.
But they intentionally wanted to have an isolation between the tenants. So that's slightly different.
Okay. Yeah, I guess the other option I was thinking of doing, and what I wanted to experiment with, was that inner cluster. You can actually peer the Calico with a router that's running inside as another VM, like just running Bird in a VM. And now from that VM, you can actually see those internal IP addresses.
There are many ways, Well, you know that. Yeah.
But I like the isolation, just keep it all inside the hosting cluster.
Especially if you're doing testing, to be honest.
Yes.
Because if you want to do testing, you don't want to wreck your under cluster. And in that case, I think having an isolation, even if you pay price with encapsulation, I think that's worth it. To some degree, right? It's always about balance.
Yeah, the isolation is nice. So the other thing I was curious about isolation is I wanted to play with things like load balancing inside with something like VRRP, which might use a multicast.
VRRP.
Yeah, and I don't know, I've never tried this. Maybe this is a different question. I was wondering how Calico can like if VMs can multicast to each other over Calico. I don't know if it handles that or not.
Yeah, so it depends on the networking plugin. So we tried that actually with Multus, and we noticed that we had to do some fixes because the Linux bridge is usually not passing through multicast traffic, and we had to enable it. And that actually, what do I want to say? Oh yeah, so there might be some glitches you need to see. It depends on the networking plugin you use, so Calico in that case. Okay, but I would like to go back to the agenda. Thanks for that vivid discussion. All interesting, cool. Because we're reaching the top of the hour, and I just wonder if somebody else has a topic.
Yeah, actually, Ark had introduced one more agenda item, which was the pod and exec privileges. So we should turn it over to him.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So the problem the PR I posted tries to address is that currently Virt API uses the pod's exec privileges to execute a script when trying to initiate a console or serial console or VNC console. So the risk is that if someone accesses the Virt API, then he can have access to executing commands on all the pods. So the goal is to get rid of those privileges from Virt API, and instead to get to the VM through Virt handler. Virt API goes to Virt handler, and Virt handler uses the Unix socket to get to the VM. So yeah, the PR was posted, and hopefully today it will be ready.
Sorry, typing on mute, trying to catch up with you. To proxy. Cool. That's really fantastic. I'm glad to see that. It's not been a problem, but any way we can address potential future problems is always a good step.
So
Yeah, go on.
Maybe just one remark that actually goes also a little bit back to the multicast thing, because enabling multicast on the Linux bridge requires higher net admin capabilities, and that is underlying what Arik is doing, right? That at KubeVirt we're currently looking to reduce the privileges and permissions KubeVirt needs in order to run VMs, in order to reduce the attack surface. We're not concerned. I mean, we know of some rough edges, and we're working on that. We're happy to do a security. By the way, we could propose actually to have a security session on Zoom if other people are interested to hear about the security concerns we have and how we plan to address them. But I wouldn't want to do it right now in a public recorded session just to avoid that, people are getting too eager of it. But if somebody's interested, please send an email to the mailing list and we can hook up the right people to speak about the whole security topic in KubeVirt. Cool, Arik. By the way, Arik, is that work progressing well, or are there any unknown surprises?
So we had some surprises, and hopefully they were addressed. So yeah, I just posted another draft of, another update to the PR. So we'll see.
Cool, thanks.
All right, and with that, are there any other topics to bring up today? All right, well, thanks everybody. It's been quite a lively discussion, and that's awesome. So hope to see everybody next week.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thanks.
guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a nice week.
You too.
Bye.